The chandeliers glowed gold over the wedding I built, but my daughter's hand came down on mine like I was a stranger. The slap didn't bruise, but it cut through silk gowns, champagne laughter, and 20 years of building a venue she hadn't paid for. She thought it was her day. She forgot whose name was on the deed. Before we start the story, tell me where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to subscribe. The chandeliers threw honeyed light over the hall, scattering gold across silk gowns and champagne flutes. Outside, the lake shimmered under the late September sun, the very view Rachel had begged for. And here it was, her wedding, her moment, in the venue I co-owned. In the venue I'd built with my own hands and sleepless nights. I'd spent the morning floating on autopilot, shaking hands with her in-laws, making sure the caterers knew where the extra ice was stored, and checking that the sound tech had the playlists queued. My heels barely made a sound on the polished oak floors as I slipped toward the dessert table, an 8-foot spread of eclairs, macarons, and a 3-tier cake that gleamed like porcelain under its sugar flowers. One of the servers leaned too close to the cake, his tray tipping. Instinct took over. I reached out, fingertips brushing the bottom tier to steady it before the top could sway, and then a sharp sting cracked across the back of my hand. "Don't touch that!" Rachel's voice was all sharp edges and champagne breath. The slap wasn't hard enough to bruise, but the sound, God, the sound, cut through the room like a dropped glass. Forks stilled midair. A few guests gasped. I caught the flicker of a phone raised, the red record light glowing. I withdrew my hand slowly, my palm cooling in the air-conditioned hush. The frosting smudge on my finger felt suddenly ridiculous, obscene. "Rachel." My voice was quiet, meant only for her. She didn't soften. "It's not for you to mess with." I glanced toward the bar. Trent, her brand-new husband, was busy shaking hands with a groomsman, oblivious. Or maybe pretending to be. From across the room, Maya caught my eye. She'd been my friend for 40 years, my business partner for 25. She didn't move toward me, didn't make a scene. She just held my gaze and nodded once, her eyes saying what her lips didn't. I saw it. A laugh bubbled somewhere in the crowd, the forced, too bright kind people use when they don't know what else to do. Someone whispered. The music tried to carry on. I stepped back from the cake, my fingers curling into my palm. My first instinct was to walk out. My second was to stay, smile, and swallow it whole. Because that's what Southern mothers do when their children embarrass them. Instead, I chose the third option. I said nothing. The rest of the reception blurred past me in swirls of chiffon and toasts I barely heard. Rachel danced, twirling in her satin gown, hairpins glinting under the fairy lights. To anyone who hadn't seen, it was the perfect evening. But for those who had, the slap lingered, unspoken but present, like a sour note under sweet music. I shook hands. I smiled for photos, but I did not go near that cake again. By the time the sparklers came out for their send-off, the night air had turned sharp with lake breeze. I kissed Trent's cheek, gave Rachel the briefest hug, and let her turn away first. Back at home, the lake was a darker mirror, holding only the moon's reflection. I set my clutch down on the kitchen island and towed off my shoes, the day's events replaying in my mind with uncomfortable clarity. My hand still tingled, though I couldn't say if it was from the slap or the restraint it had taken not to answer it. I poured myself a glass of wine and walked to my study. The mahogany desk still smelled faintly of lemon oil from Maya's last cleaning. I opened the bottom drawer, the one I kept locked. Inside, under a folder of tax returns, sat the venue's contract binder. The Sterling Lakeside Event Hall rental agreement, Rachel Sterling and Trent Marshall. Signed by them? Number stamped with payment? Not a dime. I flipped to the back. Section 14, Termination Clause. My own language, drafted years ago with Maya, stared back at me. In the event of non-payment or unsigned agreement, ownership retains the right to revoke use of property at any time, including during event hours. I slid the page free from its plastic sleeve, the paper crisp against my fingers. For the first time all evening, I smiled. Not wide, not gloating, but slow, controlled. Some mothers ground their revenge in harsh words. Mine would be in ink. I laid the claws on the desk blotter, smoothed it flat, and pulled out my pen. Tomorrow, Rachel would still be glowing from her wedding night. But tomorrow, I would be ready to take it all back. The morning after the wedding, the lake looked like a silver coin tossed onto the horizon. I sat on my porch with my coffee cooling in my hands, last night replaying in fragments. Rachel's jeweled hand, the slap, the silence that followed. The unpaid contract lay on my desk inside, its termination clause staring at me like a loaded pistol. I didn't even have to open it again. I'd memorized every word when I drafted it years ago. Maya arrived just after 8, wearing dark sunglasses and carrying 2 breakfast tacos. She didn't even say hello, just set the tacos down and asked, "You sleep?" Barely. I slid the contract across the table. "Tell me I'm not imagining this." She skimmed the first page, flipped to the back, and snorted. "Nope. No payment, no signature, nothing but entitlement." I leaned back in my chair. "So we still own the date, technically." Maya's mouth curved. "Not just the date, the event. Fully. Every brick, every chair, every last sugar flower on that cake." My coffee tasted sweeter after she said it. "So, if I wanted to, we could pull it?" Her eyes glittered over the rim of her cup. "During the event. Legally." The breeze rattled the wind chimes. Somewhere in the distance, a boat engine started. I pictured Rachel's shocked face, not in anger, but in the moment she realized she wasn't untouchable. "I want to interrupt dessert," I said finally. Maya didn't blink. "Good. People remember dessert." We moved inside to my office, the smell of cedar still clinging to the bookshelves. Maya pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'll print the cancellation notice. We'll need the original contract and the authority letter on venue letterhead." I opened the top drawer, pulling out the stationery embossed with Sterling Lakeside Event Hall. "How clean can we make this?" "As clean as crystal." She tapped the printer icon, the whir and click filling the quiet. "No shouting, no pettiness. Just the law. In front of everyone." The paper slid out warm, the ink still glossy. "Notice of immediate contract termination. Non-payment." My name at the bottom in looping, deliberate script. Maya folded it neatly into an envelope, pressing the flap closed with her thumb. She handed it to me like it was a gift. "You sure you want to do it?" she asked. I looked out the window. The sunlight glittered off the lake, just like the chandeliers had last night. But unlike last night, there was no one here to tell me where I didn't belong. "Oh, I'm sure." We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the printer cooling, the faint smell of breakfast tacos still in the air. Then Maya leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "You know she's going to try to spin it," she said. "Let her," I replied. "People have already seen the slap." Maya smiled, not wide, just enough to tell me she was picturing it too. "All right then. During dessert." The envelope sat between us, white and unassuming. But inside it was the kind of power Rachel had never bothered to understand, written in clauses and signatures instead of temper and theatrics. By tomorrow night, she'd know exactly how much it cost to take a swing at the woman who gave her everything. By mid-morning, my phone was buzzing like a hornet's nest. Rachel had posted the first round of wedding photos, Trent in his navy suit, her in that silk mermaid gown, the lake behind them like a Hallmark painting. The caption read, Thanks to all who made our dream possible. No mention of me. Not one. It was almost impressive, the way she could crop me out of her life and still keep the lighting flattering. I was tagged in other guests' photos, smiling at the welcome table, holding a champagne flute during cocktail hour. But within an hour, the tags were gone. I didn't need to ask how. Rachel had always been quick with her edits. Then, just before noon, I saw it. A 30-second video, shaky but clear enough. Me leaning toward the cake to straighten the ribbon around the base, Rachel's hand appearing in frame. The slap, sharp, audible frosting smearing my fingers. Gasps from the crowd. My stillness afterward, like I'd been carved from stone. The caption read, "When you tell your mom not to touch your cake." By the time I set my coffee down, it had over 10,000 views. Maya called within minutes. "Don't engage," she said. "I'm not." "You're tempted." I let the silence answer for me. "Deb." Her voice softened. "We pull this clean. Not petty. That's how you win." I leaned against the kitchen counter watching a line of ducks cut across the lake. "I'm not petty, Maya. I'm precise." The post-wedding brunch was held at a downtown hotel, all glass windows and overpriced mimosas. I wore navy, polished, understated, the kind of outfit that said I came for breakfast, not battle. Rachel was in a white sundress, playing the part of the gracious new bride, hugging guests with a laugh that reached no further than her lips. She stood at the center of the room, clinking a spoon against her glass. "To the people who shaped me," she began, her voice lilting with that faux humility she used for strangers, "and to the women who taught me strength." My stomach tightened. Her eyes swept the room, deliberately gliding past me. "You know who you are." I took a slow sip of orange juice. Maya had been right. Precision over pettiness. So I stayed quiet, letting the clinking of forks and the murmur of conversations fill the air. Rachel laughed too loudly at a guest's joke. Trent beamed like a man who thought his job was done, and I simply observed. After brunch, I moved toward the exit, weaving through clusters of family and friends. I could feel eyes on me, some pitying, some curious, a few already knowing too much from that video. I had just reached the double doors when I heard, "Deb, wait." Trent stood there, looking as if he'd rather be anywhere else. His tie was loose, his smile forced. "She didn't mean it," he said. "You know how Rachel gets when she's stressed." I raised an eyebrow. "Stressed enough to hit her own mother?" "It wasn't a hit," he said quickly. It was a moment. Don't ruin this over cake." I let the words settle between us, the way heat hangs in the Texas air before a storm. "Trent," I said, my voice even. "This was never about the cake." His mouth opened, then closed, like he was searching for a script that didn't exist. I stepped past him, my heels clicking against the marble floor. By the time I reached the parking lot, the sun had shifted, throwing long shadows across the hood of my car. In my bag, the envelope from Maya felt heavier than it had that morning. Tomorrow, Rachel would learn that memories weren't the only things I could erase. Rachel's voice carried across the patio like it always had, sharp enough to be heard, sweet enough to pass for charm if you didn't know better. "Mom, stay for a few shots," she called, her hand already motioning me toward the photographer. It wasn't a request. It was for optics. I stepped into place beside her, feeling the warmth of the late morning Texas sun on the back of my neck. The smell of the roses from centerpieces still lingering in the air. Cameras clicked. Rachel's white dress brushed my arm, stiff with starch and tulle. Her smile was wide, practiced. Mine was the kind you could mistake for polite if you weren't paying attention. The photographer kept chirping, "One more." And another. "Perfect, ladies. Perfect. Right." Within an hour, I was back home with my shoes kicked off, the air conditioner humming low. My phone buzzed with an email from Maya, No subject line, just a file attachment. I clicked it open to see a clean, tight folder labeled Final Ownership, Sterling Event Venue. Every contract, every timestamp, every signature, or in Rachel's case, lack of one, lined up like chess pieces in a checkmate I hadn't even had to announce yet. The venue was ours, entirely, legally. She had no more claim to it than a guest who wandered in off the road. A text from one of the bridesmaids popped up on my screen. "You're so lucky she got you to host for free. Such a gorgeous space." I didn't reply. I just pictured Rachel last week, tossing her hair and telling that same bridesmaid, "Mom and I have an understanding." It's basically for exposure. Exposure. The word tasted like something you spit out. By mid-afternoon, I was logged into the venue's back-end system. My fingers hovered over the announcement banner. I typed slowly, deliberately, "Booked for private event recovery. No external rentals at this time." The phrase was clean, unremarkable, and utterly final. Within the hour, my inbox began to fill. Former clients, future brides, and curious strangers all wanted to know why the venue was suddenly unavailable. Some had seen the video. Others had only heard whispers. A dozen DMs from guests rolled in. "How'd you make it so perfect? Is that venue yours? Best wedding I've ever been to." Well, except for that one moment. I responded to none. That night, I stood in the main hall alone. The air smelled faintly of champagne and peonies, the last traces of Rachel's reception lingering in the polished wood and crystal sconces. I could still see her there, hand lifted mid-slap, the crowd pausing like a photograph before the noise came rushing back. The staff would be in tomorrow to clean the carpets, but tonight, the space belonged to me again. Completely. When I got home, I poured a glass of wine and sat at my desk. The cursor blinked in my email draft to the staff. My hands didn't hesitate. Cancel all standing services, effective noon. I hit send. The contract Rachel never signed was one thing, but the services? The catering, the linens, the lighting she assumed would just be hers? Those would vanish faster than a wedding hashtag. Some lessons you teach in the moment. Others, you let them find out the hard way. The second gown was even louder than the first, layers of satin in a shade of champagne that glowed under the chandeliers, a bodice dripping in crystals like someone had bottled the word excess. Rachel's heels clicked against the oak floors in sharp, confident beats, her laughter already pitched to be heard above the string quartet. I watched from the side of the room, invisible in black silk. This wasn't my moment. Not yet. Maya caught my eye from the tech booth. She had her hand resting on the dimmer switch, her other hand already on the power to the soundboard. She gave me the smallest nod. "Now?" she mouthed. I tilted my head once. The uplights went first. Those soft blush beams that had been washing the walls in wedding warmth flickered, then died. Murmurs rose from the crowd. The quartet's final note hung awkwardly in the air before cutting off altogether. Rachel turned toward the booth, her smile tightening. "What's going on?" I was already moving. The click of my heels echoed in the silence as I stepped up onto the low stage, microphone in hand. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. My voice, when it came, was steady enough to slice glass. "This venue," I began, scanning the room of guests frozen mid-bite and mid-sip, "is no longer under rental contract." The words landed like a dropped tray, sharp, shocking, impossible to ignore. Rachel blinked, still frozen at the center of the dance floor. "Are you serious right now?" she demanded, the pitch in her voice climbing. I met her stare. "As serious as you were when you slapped me." A ripple moved through the crowd. Some gasps. Some whispered, "That's her mother?" And somewhere, the faint mechanical whir of someone's phone recording. Rachel's groom Trent took a half step toward me. We, we have guests, he stammered, as though reminding me of the stakes might undo the fact. Yes, I said calmly. And they're about to witness a contract being enforced. From the corner, Maya emerged, papers in hand. The legal language on the termination clause was clear and bold, my signature sitting at the bottom like a seal. She didn't hand it to Rachel. She handed it to the two uniformed security officers who had just stepped through the side door. The murmur became a low tide of voices. A few people set down their champagne flutes. Others kept drinking, eyes darting between me and Rachel like they'd stumbled into a theater performance they couldn't look away from. Rachel's cheeks flushed red against the glitter of her dress. "You can't do this!" she snapped. I let a slow smile pull at the corner of my mouth. "Oh, Rachel, I already did." The officers moved to either side of the stage. One of them glanced at me for confirmation. I nodded toward Maya, who placed the signed authority to vacate directly into his hand. The sound of paper passing from palm to palm was louder than it should have been. Rachel's voice cracked. "This is my wedding." "This," I corrected, my voice soft but carrying, "was a gift. One you chose not to value, and now it's over." Somewhere in the back, a single clap broke the tension, sharp and solitary. It was followed by another, then another. Small, hesitant applause that grew into scattered approval. Not everyone joined in, but enough did. Rachel stood frozen, satin pooling around her feet, while the officers took their first step toward her. The moment the termination clause left Maya's hands, the air in the venue changed. It wasn't the warm buzz of champagne anymore. It was the tense, brittle silence of a room deciding whether to leave or watch the show. The first guests slipped toward the doors in polite confusion, whispering to one another in the kind of hushed tones people reserve for funerals. Others stayed put, phones angled discreetly toward the stage. I caught the gleam of recording lights in the dimmed room. Rachel's voice shattered the murmur. "Are you kidding me right now?" she screamed, her second gown glittering under the last of the remaining lights. Trent moved to her side, his hand on her arm. "Baby, just calm down. We can talk to them, work it out." "No!" she shrieked, jerking away from him. "She's ruining this on purpose." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I stepped down from the stage, heels sharp against the floor, and walked straight past the dessert table. The cake sat there, pristine and towering, white fondant, smooth as porcelain, sugar flowers curling perfectly at the edges. I could smell the almond in the buttercream from where I stood. I didn't touch it. Maya was already in motion. She moved like a general, phone in one hand, checklist in the other, directing our staff with precision. The uplights were being wheeled away, floral arrangements boxed up, table linens pulled like stage curtains. Rachel spun toward the vendors. "What are you doing? You can't just—" One of the caterers glanced at Maya, then back at her. "Ma'am, our contract is with the venue owner. We've been instructed to close service." Rachel's wedding planner appeared at my side, her carefully composed smile cracking. "Deborah, this is a disaster. Do you have any idea?" I turned to face her fully, my voice low enough that only she could hear. "Number. This is a refund. One she didn't earn, but is getting anyway." Her mouth opened, then closed. She stepped back. Across the room, a cluster of younger guests was clapping softly, almost like they couldn't decide if this was the end of a movie or the start of a fight. An older couple near the exit paused to shake my hand on the way out. "Good for you," the man murmured before slipping into the cool Texas night. Rachel's breathing had gone ragged. She grabbed Trent's sleeve. "Say something. Do something." Trent looked at her, then at me. His lips parted, but nothing came out. I passed them both without a glance, heading toward the double doors where the last of the photographers were packing up. Outside, the cicadas were loud enough to drown out the muffled chaos still inside. The night air smelled of lake water and honeysuckle, a reminder that some things at least stayed calm. Behind me, I heard the slow collapse of the reception, chairs scraping, clinking glassware being crated, the occasional slam of an angry door. I didn't turn back until I was in the parking lot with Maya. She locked the venue's front doors herself, the keys jingling in her hand. "You good?" she asked. I smiled. "I'm perfect." By the time I got home and poured a glass of wine, my phone was buzzing. Rachel's social media handle lit up the screen. The video started with her in the second gown, makeup smudged, mascara trailing dark lines down her cheeks. Her voice was high and sharp, every word designed to sting. "My own mother sabotaged my wedding," she said into the camera. "For what?" By sunrise, the video had already jumped from a few thousand views to 500,000. It was posted by a guest I didn't even remember speaking to, a quick, grainy clip of me leaning toward the cake, Rachel's hand coming down fast, frosting smearing my knuckle, the sharp slap echoing just enough to make everyone watching online wince. The caption was short, brutal, and impossible to misinterpret. "Bride slaps her own mother over cake." I didn't share it. I didn't have to. By mid-morning, every wedding gossip account had it. Then, the lifestyle blogs. Then, the talk shows. One morning, host clutched her pearls and said, "If my mother owned the venue, I'd let her eat the cake." The audience laughed, clapped, and the clip kept looping. Rachel's dress shimmering in the venue lights as she swatted me away, my face unreadable, the guests behind her freezing like statues. I made coffee and watched it without sound, studying the angles, the way my hand hovered, the way hers didn't hesitate. By noon, the comments were a storm. "Wait, Mom owns that venue? Is this Deb Sterling? The Sterling Lakeside? This is why I eloped." Imagine slapping the woman who literally built your wedding backdrop. Rachel tried damage control. She posted a 3-minute Instagram video in her honeymoon robe, hair damp, trying to laugh it off. "It was a misunderstanding, okay? My mom is amazing. I was just stressed. We were worried the cake was going to collapse, and..." The clip cut mid-sentence on one gossip page, replaced with slow-motion replays of her palm connecting with mine. People weren't buying it. Maya called mid-afternoon, her voice almost gleeful. "You're trending in Canada." "That's new," I said, sipping my coffee. "They're not talking about the cake anymore. They're talking about ownership. Someone pulled your LLC records. The comments are basically a contract law seminar." It was true. By evening, threads popped up explaining how the venue was mine, how Rachel had never signed the final paperwork, how I had the legal right to end the event. People were quoting sections of Texas rental law like they were reading horoscopes. At 8:14 p.m., I broke my silence. I didn't post a video. I didn't write a paragraph. I left exactly one comment under the original viral clip. "She forgot who built the foundation." No hashtags, no emojis. Just that. Within minutes, it had tens of thousands of likes. Someone made it into a meme, overlaying the words on a photo of the venue's stone archway at sunset. Someone else printed it on a mock wedding invitation and posted it to Twitter. "The Foundation," by Deb Sterling. By the end of the week, public sympathy had shifted. Women who'd been erased at their children's weddings. Fathers who'd been sidelined in family businesses. Brides who'd been told their day gave them permission to treat people like props. The DM requests were endless. "Deb, you handled that with class." "I wish I'd stood up for myself at my daughter's wedding." "Can you be my mom?" Rachel, on the other hand, was drowning. Her carefully curated honeymoon posts were flooded with comments. "Cake slapper." "How's the view from the venue you don't own?" "Apologize to your mom." The tipping point came quietly. A travel brand, one she'd been promoting since engagement, posted a polite, icy statement. Due to recent events, we've decided to discontinue our partnership with Rachel Marshall effective immediately. I read it twice, then put my phone face down. Somewhere in a hotel suite by the ocean, my daughter had just realized that you can't slap the hand that fed you and expect the check to clear. The email came mid-morning, while I was replanting lilies along the lakefront. No, dear Mom. No, hope you're well. Just a subject line that read, URGENT, and a paragraph that dripped entitlement. Given the abrupt termination of my reception, I expect a partial refund for services not rendered. Please advise. She had paid no deposit. Signed nothing. But there it was, written like a business transaction from a stranger. I didn't bother to answer. Maya did. Her reply went out in less than 20 minutes. It was the kind of letter that didn't just close a door, it bolted it shut from the inside. Gifted use is not guaranteed use. Your failure to execute the contractual agreement left the venue under full ownership of Sterling Lakeside. Services were concluded under Clause 4B, termination without completed contract. No refund is due, as no payment was ever received. No emotion, no wiggle room, just law. But I wasn't finished. I dug through my file cabinet until I found it, the unsigned venue contract. My signature already in place, the bride line empty and glaring. I slipped it into a gold frame, wrapped it in brown paper, and sent it to her doorstep by courier. No note, no explanation, just a silent exhibit of her own negligence. By that evening, Maya sent me a screenshot from Rachel's social media. She'd tried to spin the narrative. I was robbed of my big day. But the comment section was a massacre. You didn't even pay, girl. She gave you the venue, and you slapped her? This is why contracts exist. The follower count beneath her profile picture was shrinking in real time. 1,000 gone overnight. Then 2. Then 3. One brand partnership quietly removed her from their page. Another issued a statement about misaligned values. I updated the venue website the next morning. New header, fresh photographs, a tagline that sat like a crown over every image. Not just a space, a standard. The gallery shimmered. Sunset archways, crystal place settings, champagne flutes catching golden light. There was no trace of the wedding that wasn't, just the elegance I'd built long before Rachel's tantrum tried to stain it. That night, my phone rang. Trent's name flashed across the screen. His voice was quiet, almost uncertain. You could have handled this differently, he said, skipping any small talk. I could hear the faint hum of cars through his window, the pause where he wanted me to fill the silence with apology. Could I? I asked. She's hurting, he said finally, as if that erased the slap, the humiliation, the unpaid bills. You embarrassed her in front of everyone. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even let my breath change. Trent, I said. So could she. The line stayed quiet, and then, a click. I set the phone down and turned toward the window, where the lake caught the moonlight like a secret only I knew. I'd spent my life building a place where people celebrated love with grace, and now I'd reclaimed it. Not just from her, but for myself. By Monday morning, Rachel's wedding album hit Instagram. Curated, filtered, the colors softened into a pastel fairy tale. Every frame was designed to scream perfect. Every frame was missing me. In the group shots, she'd cropped me out entirely, leaving an odd gap in the lineup, like a missing tooth in a smile. In the reception images, the camera angle seemed conveniently tilted, the background conveniently blurred. No sign of the moment when she'd slapped my hand away. The problem for Rachel was this. She wasn't the only one with a camera. By lunchtime, tagged guests began posting their own candids. In these, I was there, standing beside the cake table, smiling politely, unaware of the sting that was coming. And in more than one post, you could see her hand mid-swing, frosting smudged on my skin, my face frozen in startled composure. One bridesmaid's TikTok hit 200,000 views in a matter of hours. Another guest posted a carousel of behind-the-scenes photos captioned, "Sometimes the family drama is the main event." No matter how many times Rachel tried to DM people to remove the tags, more unedited photos surfaced. She was fighting a hydra. Every post she buried sprouted two more. By Wednesday, the local news station ran a wedding segment with the headline, "Brides on Camera Cake Slap Goes Viral." But here's the twist. Mom owned the venue. They used my full name, my face, my business. And instead of backlash, my inbox filled with orders, inquiries, and something I hadn't expected. Letters from women. Handwritten notes arrived in thick envelopes with looping cursive. "My daughter disinvited me from her wedding. I thought I was alone. Reading what happened to you made me feel seen. Thank you for not letting her rewrite what happened." Even my floral delivery driver noticed. "You've had more bouquets this week than Valentine's Day," he said, setting down yet another arrangement of lilies, roses, and bright yellow sunflowers. Most came unsigned. Some had small cards with just one word: solidarity. That afternoon, Maya walked into my office holding her phone like it was a trophy. "You did it," she said simply. I arched a brow. "Did what?" "You held your line." I leaned back in my chair, letting her words settle. She was wrong. "I didn't hold it," I said. "I reclaimed it." She grinned. "Not the soft kind, but the sharp one that means your oldest friend is proud." "Well, you've also reclaimed half the county's respect, and their event deposits." We laughed, but there was a truth under it. A clean kind of satisfaction that wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about correcting the record before someone else painted over it. By Friday, Rachel's curated feed looked brittle. Too perfect. Too quiet. Engagement on her posts had plummeted. She posted one throwback shot, a romantic dance with Trent, the colors muted to sepia, but the comments filled with people asking, "Where's the unedited version? And where's your mom?" And then, late that night, an email arrived in my inbox from a law firm in Dallas. Subject: Cease and desist. Public defamation. The body was filled with lawyerly bark, accusations that my statements and inferences had damaged Rachel's reputation, that my public commentary constituted defamation, that I was to refrain from any further public statements regarding the events of June 14th. I read it twice, then slid it across my desk to Maya. She didn't even sit down before scanning it, chuckling under her breath. "They really think this holds water?" I reached for the file folder already labeled with every piece of proof we had. The unsigned contract, the termination clause, screenshots of her posts, and most damning, the raw footage of the slap itself. "No," I said, a smile tugging at my mouth. "They think I scare easy." Maya tapped the folder. "Well, they're about to. Remember why that's a mistake." The morning after the cease and desist landed on my desk, I poured a cup of chicory coffee, sat at my oak dining table, and slid the venue's LLC binder toward me. The smell of paper, ink, and legal permanence had never been sweeter. Rachel's name sat there, neat and smug, in the successor-owner line, a position she assumed was hers by birthright. My hand didn't shake as I drew a single red line through it. I replaced it with one name, Maya Alvarez. "God, that feels clean," I murmured. Maya sat across from me, grinning over her half-eaten blueberry muffin. "Like scrubbing mildew off tile. Satisfying, but overdue." Carolyn, our corporate attorney, flipped the page to the official filing forms. "Once I submit this," she said, pen poised, "Rachel has no legal claim to future ownership. Ever. It won't matter if you change your will, your mind, or your hair color. This is binding. I nodded. Then file it today. The moment Carolyn's pen left the page, the air shifted. Finality has a sound. Not loud, but deep. Like a door clicking shut somewhere you'll never open it again. By that afternoon, Rachel's predictable storm hit social media. She went live, tear-streaked, voice trembling just enough to be performative. "She's taking away my legacy," she sobbed into the camera, all because of a misunderstanding over cake. The comments were swift and merciless. "Girl, it's her venue. Play stupid games. Your mom built that place. You just booked it for free." I didn't watch the whole thing. Maya did, purely for sport. "She's getting roasted harder than pecans in August," Maya reported. "Even her bridesmaids aren't defending her. One just commented, 'I told you to chill.'" I shrugged and returned to my real work, setting up for the micro-wedding of a veteran couple who'd met in a VA waiting room. The venue glowed that evening, strung with soft Edison bulbs, the lake outside turning gold in the setting sun. While the world outside was still chewing on Rachel's drama, my focus narrowed to details that mattered. The bride's bouquet of wildflowers, the smell of peach cobbler drifting from the kitchen, the sound of the groom's laugh when the flower girl dropped her basket, and the petals scattered like confetti across the aisle. After the ceremony, as I poured champagne, the bride touched my arm. "This place has heart," she said softly. "You can feel it in the walls." I smiled, not the polite one I gave to vendors or reporters, but the private kind, reserved for people who saw the truth. "It's built into the foundation," I told her. Hours later, when the last candle was snuffed and the last glass rinsed, I returned to my office to shut down my computer. A little notification blinked at the top of the venue's booking page. "New review posted." I almost ignored it. But something about the subject line, "Feedback from recent event attendee," caught my eye. I clicked. Rating: 0 stars, anonymous daughter. Cold, controlling, doesn't know how to let go. A wedding venue should be about joy, not punishment. I stared at it for a long moment, the corners of my mouth curling upward. "Oh, Rachel," I whispered, "you just handed me more proof of exactly why I did this." Maya appeared in the doorway with her coat over her arm. "You ready to lock up?" "Almost," I said, hovering over the Respond to Review button. We set out 20 folding chairs in the barrel room and still ran out of space. The air smelled like lemon oil and cold stone. The lake light slipped through the high windows in long, pale rectangles. On a small table near the door, we put out name tags, black coffee, and a bowl of pecan sandies. By the time I clipped on my mic, women were standing along the back wall, notebooks in hand, eyes alert. "Tonight's Q&A," I began, "is about lines. How you draw them, how you keep them, and how you defend them without raising your voice." No one coughed. No one shifted. It was the hush people save for sermons and verdicts. A woman in a navy blazer raised her hand. "Do you still own the venue?" I smiled. "I do." A laugh rippled, quiet and satisfied. Another hand. "If it's your daughter asking, how do you say no?" "You say no the same way you say yes," I answered. On paper, with clarity, and without apology. Maya, standing off to the side with an iPad, nodded like a proud stage manager. The questions came faster. How do you set payment schedules? How do you explain gift versus use? What happens when family blurs the contract? "You put love in the vows," I said. "You put law in the venue." Pens scratched, heads dipped. Someone snapped a photo. It felt less like a Q&A and more like a recalibration, a room deciding together that boundaries weren't cruelty. They were care. By morning, a local business magazine had us on their homepage. "Mother of the Venue: How Sterling Lakeside Turned a Viral Slap into a Masterclass on Ownership." The photo was me in the archway at dusk, arms folded, the lake gilded behind me. The reporter quoted one line and made it a pull quote in bold. "You can't disrupt what you don't own." Our inbox erupted. Subject lines stacked like dominoes. Inquiry: "Do you still own it?" Question: "Can you officiate?" Request: "We're military. Micro-wedding. Is it possible?" We tripled our inquiries in a week. The phone rang so often we moved the receiver off the cradle to buy ourselves a minute's peace. A florist sent peonies for the brand that remembered its spine. A baker offered us a cake tasting as big as a boundary. I took one day to think and one day to write, then announced the thing I wish I'd had at 27. A mentorship program for first-gen women entrepreneurs in weddings. 6 Saturdays. Contracts, pricing, scope creep, silence as strategy. I made the tuition modest. I made the reading list strict. Maya added a module called "How to Say No Without Explaining Yourself to Death." The application portal opened at noon. By 12:07, we had more applicants than seats. Half of them wrote the same sentence in their personal statements. "I was taught to please. I want to learn to lead." On Thursday, the apology arrived. The subject line was lowercase, as if that softened anything. "Sorry." The body was a paragraph of ash. "I overreacted. The internet made it worse. You know I love you. Can we talk? It's not fair what people are saying about me. I'm your daughter." I read it once. Twice. The lemon oil from the morning lingered on my fingers. A smudge of flour stained my cuff from helping the caterer dust petite fours. I let the cursor blink at the end of her last sentence until it looked like it might drill through the page. Then I typed back, "You can slap a hand. You can't unsign a deed." I didn't add love. I didn't add mom. I pressed send and watched the message leave like a thing I had carried too long. That afternoon, we hosted a quick courthouse escape ceremony for 2 women who'd met stocking shelves at H-E-B. We strung the Edison lights even though it was broad daylight. The room smelled like roses and yeast rolls. One bride wore white. The other wore a blue jumpsuit with pockets. When I handed them their glasses, one squeezed my palm and whispered, "It feels safe in here." "It is," I said, and meant it. The business magazine posted a follow-up, an interview with our first mentorship cohort. A line from a 23-year-old planner stood out. "I thought legacy was inheritance. Now I know it's standards." I printed it and taped it to the back office door, right where we hang keys. At closing, Maya came in with the latest numbers, eyes dancing. Another 6 inquiries. 2 for Tuesdays. The coffee truck wants to park by the west lawn for morning vows. I wiped down the marble bar with slow, neat circles. "Let's keep Tuesdays for people who don't have Saturdays," I said, "the ones building from scratch." She signed off on the calendar, then glanced at her phone and hissed through her teeth. "Well, there it is." "What?" She angled the screen. Rachel, glossy and composed, hair blown smooth, eyes rimmed in soft brown, stared out from a polished announcement graphic, "Coming soon, Sterling Social, an event collective by Rachel Marshall." Underneath, a caption about a fresh start and events with heart. Posted to a new account with a bio that borrowed our cadence but none of our weight. I watched the little heart count tick upward in slow, uncertain pulses. I could already hear the DMs piling up, the vlog disclaimers, the inevitable "it's not what you think" video. Outside, the lake was a dark sheet, the cicadas beginning their evening hymn. The venue lights hummed. Somewhere in the kitchen, the fridge kicked on with a loyal thunk, the sound of a space that keeps what's inside cold and safe, no matter who knocks. "Hungry?" Maya asked. "For truth," I said. Then, more practical. "For tacos." We flipped the open placard to closed and killed the chandeliers. The barrel room fell into a soft dusk, The mural of women in motion, a faint wash of color on the far wall, a reminder of who this place is for. As we stepped onto the porch, my phone buzzed again. A push alert from the magazine. Breaking. Bride from viral venue story launches rival event brand. The comments were already a brawl. I slid the phone into my bag. Let her announce, I told the night air. I built. The flyer landed on my desk with the morning mail, tucked between an electric bill and a catalog for folding chairs. At first, I thought it was a styled mock-up from one of our past shoots. Same blush and gold palette, same looping font, even the same eucalyptus sprigs curling around the corners. Then I saw the name at the bottom, Rachel Marshall Events. Pop-up soiree. The date was in 2 weeks. The location? A generic warehouse, but the photos, God help her, were screenshots from our Instagram, cropped just enough to avoid my face. I could almost hear her voice in the copy. For the discerning couple who wants elegance without the price tag. Maya walked in with her coffee, took one look, and said, "Well, she's not even subtle." I slid the flyer across the desk. Same colors, same fonts, even the chairs in the mock-up? Those are ours. That's the Magnolia set. She thinks this is inspiration. Maya's voice was calm, but her eyes sharpened. It's infringement. By lunch, we had our trademark attorney on speaker. By dinner, Rachel had a cease and desist in her inbox, complete with a side-by-side comparison of her flyer and our registered branding portfolio. 24 hours later, her event page was gone. The Instagram post was deleted and a "rescheduling details coming soon" went up in its place. Maya poured us 2 glasses of iced tea. "You're not going to gloat?" "I don't gloat," I said, sipping. "I design." And I meant it. Winning was fine, but building something worth protecting, that was the real satisfaction. The following week, I unveiled the project I'd been holding back for months, a mural on the west wall of the barrel room. It stretched from floor to ceiling, a wash of sunset tones behind a procession of women in motion. No faces, just the curve of shoulders, the swing of skirts, the suggestion of wind in hair. Some carried baskets, some carried books, one carried a single perfect cake. When the local paper came to photograph it, they ran the feature under the headline, "Mother of the Venue." The article framed me in front of the mural, arms loose at my sides, like the building and I had both decided to breathe out at the same time. That Saturday, a couple came in for a tour. The bride stopped dead in front of the mural, fingertips grazing the painted folds of a dress. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It feels like it's holding us." "It is," I told her. Later that afternoon, Maya and I stood beneath it with the late sun spilling in. "You know," she said, tilting her head toward the painted women, "you're more than a mother. You're a boundary." I laughed, low. "Boundaries aren't cold walls, Maya. They're foundations." We closed up for the evening, the air outside still warm enough to smell the cedar from the lake. A small stack of mail waited in the box by the gate. Bills, flyers, and one pale pink envelope with my name in looping script. I knew the handwriting before I opened it. Inside, a single card. The front was embossed with anemones. Inside, just 7 words. "Sorry, I miss you. ER." I stood there with the paper warm from my hand, the gate creaking gently in the breeze. Somewhere in the trees, a mockingbird was testing a new song. It should have felt like something opening. Instead, it felt like the moment you hear a knock on a door you've already locked. I slid the card back into its envelope, walked into the office and set it on top of the fireproof box where the will, the deeds, and every signed contract lived. Maya, watching me, raised an eyebrow. "Going to answer?" I turned the key in the box and let the lock click shut. "Already did," I said. We strung the Edison bulbs from beam to beam until the barrel room glowed like a warm hive. Outside, the lake wore the last light like silk. Inside, the air smelled of peach cobbler, lemon oil, and a whisper of vanilla from the buttercream chilling in the kitchen. It was our venue's anniversary, 10 years to the day since Maya and I signed the lease and promised each other we'd turn 4 walls and a view into something that held people up. By 6, the room was full. Former couples swept back through the doors with strollers and new rings and stories. Vendors hugged us at the threshold. The jazz trio threaded a lazy horn line through the chatter. A caterer slid past me with a tray of bacon-wrapped dates, murmuring, "Left side's your crowd, Ms. Sterling, the ones who cry during toasts." Maya brushed by, her tablet tucked under her arm, the grin she reserves for evenings that work. "They're asking where the cake is," she said. "In the cooler," I told her, though we both knew she meant something else. At 7:30, she tapped her mic. The room settled into a warm hush. "Friends," she said, voice carrying like a host at a family table. "Thank you for building this place with us. 10 years ago, all we had were keys, a view, and a wild belief in contracts." Laughter rippled. She tipped her chin toward me. "And tonight, Deb cuts the cake." A small cheer lifted, like the sound of a match catching. The kitchen doors swung open and out rolled the cake, 3 tiers in our colors: cream, champagne, a whisper of blush, no sugar roses, no gowns of piping. Clean bands, a single eucalyptus branch, a tiny gold X tucked at the base like a signature. The baker had smoothed the buttercream to a satin finish. When I laid my palm near it, I could feel its cool breath. Maya put the knife in my hand. "Not a soul touches it before you," she said, sotto voce, and squeezed my fingers once. Her ring clicked softly against the handle. For a second, I saw a hand coming toward mine, the old reflex flaring. Then I inhaled the room, the wine, the wax, the bright citrus tang from the clementine centerpiece, and felt the moment steady. I lifted the knife. "To the couples who trusted us," I said, not needing a mic. "To the vendors who saved us, and to the women, especially the women, who learned the difference between a gift and a demand." I smiled. "To clarity and contracts." "Clarity and contracts!" The room echoed, glasses raised, crystal chiming like rain. I cut the first slice. The blade slid through the buttercream with the clean hush of silk torn right, and a hush fell with it. No gasp, no slap, just the gentle hold your breath of a ritual reclaimed. The inside was almond with a ribbon of apricot jam. The smell rose warm and bright as sunlight. I plated the first piece and handed it to a grandmother I recognized from a winter wedding years back. She held it like it was a christening. Pictures were taken, of me laughing with icing on my knuckle, of Maya feeding me a forkful like we were ridiculous and free. Someone shouted, "10 more years!" Someone else said, "Make it 20. The jazz trio slid into "At Last," and a couple who had married here on a Tuesday danced in their sneakers under our chandelier. At the edge of the room, the mentorship cohort clustered. All eyes and notebooks and a kind of fever that wasn't desperation anymore, but direction. One of them, 23, neat bun, pen behind her ear, caught my sleeve. "You make it look like a boundary can be beautiful," she said. "It is," I told her. "It just needs good lighting." I took one photo and one only. Me at the cake table, hand on the knife, smiling toward the lens with a kind of ease I hadn't seen on my own face in years. No caption, no taglines. I posted it to the venue account and let the image do the work. The likes climbed in a steady, soft tide. In the hallway, someone whispered, "That's her," with the same tone you use when you spot a lighthouse after fog. Rachel didn't come, but I knew she saw it. A text bubble flashed and vanished under her contact, a ghost of a message that never arrived. An hour later, a burner account commented a single word under my photo. Finally. It felt less like a jab than an admission. By 9, the cake was a constellation of crumbs. The trio packed up, leaving a shape of their sound in the room like heat. I helped a caterer stack empty glass chargers. The cool weight of them settled into my palms with the satisfaction of something accounted for. Outside, crickets started their metallic choir. The lake turned slate. Maya appeared with a handful of envelopes. Donor cards, thank you notes, a pair of printed photos from a couple who'd married here 5 years ago and now had a toddler with frosting on his eyebrows. "Good night, indeed," she said, shoulder to mine. "Good night," I echoed, and meant good. We were blowing out the last of the candles when Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced down, frowned, then lifted it so I could read. From Rachel. "Could we meet? Just us. Not about family. About business. I have a proposal." A second message came through before either of us spoke. "I want to buy into the venue." The air shifted. Nothing dramatic, just a faint coolness at the base of my neck. The way any room changes when someone opens a door you thought you'd sealed. The wax from the last candle puddled and stilled. Maya's voice was flat. "Alone. Not about family." I set the cake knife down, careful as if it were evidence. The silver gleamed, clean, in the candle's last glow. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think some people don't know the difference between a slice and the whole cake," I said. Maya's mouth curved. "Want me to reply?" "Tomorrow," I said. Let her sleep on her audacity. We turned off the chandeliers. The room fell to a watercolor dusk, the mural of women in motion alive in the dim. Outside, a breeze lifted, the scent of cedar drifting through the open door like luck. The cafe was one of those glass-fronted, reclaimed wood places where everything smelled faintly of cinnamon and ambition. Rachel had chosen it, probably hoping its neutral charm would soften the conversation. When I walked in, she was already there, a laptop open, a latte cooling beside it. She stood quickly, like she might hug me, but thought better of it. "Mom," she began, voice warm enough to be rehearsed. "Thanks for coming." I sat. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Maya will join us." Her expression twitched, just enough for me to see she hadn't expected that. But before she could object, Maya stepped in from behind me, her coat swinging, expression unreadable except for the tiny gleam in her eyes that meant, "Don't worry, I brought the paperwork." Rachel folded her hands on the table. "I want to make this simple," she said. "I'm ready to invest in the venue, not as your daughter, as a businesswoman." The word invest hung there like steam. I sipped my coffee. "How much?" She slid a typed sheet toward me, neat bullet points outlining a figure that might have turned another owner's head. Enough to cover a year's taxes, staff raises, and a mural restoration. Not enough to buy back dignity. I remembered the moment she'd slapped my hand away from the cake, her face taut, her voice slicing clean through the air. And I remembered the gasps, the phones lifting, the quiet little victory in her eyes that said she thought she'd claimed the moment. I slid the paper back toward her. "You can rent the parking lot for a food truck." Her face flushed. "That's insulting." Maya set her coffee down, smiling faintly. "No, that's market rate for someone who doesn't own a seat at the table." Rachel's lips thinned. "You're really going to be this petty?" "Petty?" I leaned back, feeling the wood of the chair press into my shoulders. "Petty is what happens when you act from spite. This," I gestured toward the paper, "is seasoned. It's called remembering the cost of doing business with someone who mistakes a gift for an obligation." Her voice sharpened. "I'm offering to reconnect." "You're offering to buy proximity," I said, meeting her eyes. "You had connection. You used it as leverage. The venue isn't a table you can walk back to when you're hungry. Silence settled in, filled only by the hiss of the espresso machine and the clink of spoons. Finally, she gathered her things, the laptop snapping shut like a gavel. "You'll regret this," she said, and for a moment she almost looked like the little girl who used to glare when I said no to a second slice of pie. Maya and I watched her walk out into the winter sun, her heels clicking sharp against the pavement. "Savage," Maya murmured. I smiled into my coffee. Seasoned. The rejection didn't end there. I had it formalized. An official letter from our attorney declining the proposal, citing conflict of interest and preservation of brand integrity. I had it couriered to her address, with a carbon copy sent to her email, and another filed with our business records. And, because clarity is a kindness, I had it posted to our venue's newsletter. An understated announcement that Sterling and Alvarez venue would remain privately held, with ownership unchanged. The replies poured in. Former couples wrote to say they were glad the space would stay untouched. Vendors sent little winking emojis. One bride wrote, "Boundaries look good on you." That night, I updated my trust. The venue would pass to Maya outright, with a stipulation that 20% of profits be earmarked for nonprofit youth creatives, girls who'd been told they were too small, too loud, or too much to build something worth standing in. When the papers were signed and notarized, I placed them in the fireproof box in my office, next to the framed copy of the unsigned contract from Rachel's wedding. The two sat side by side, one a promise unkept, the other a future protected. Maya looked over my shoulder at the neat stack. "That's it then. Every door locked." "Not locked," I said. "Just closed to those who slam them in your face." We turned off the office light. Outside, the venue stood in its own glow, the mural on the wall, women in motion, catching the last blush of sunset. The lake was glass that morning, the kind of stillness that makes you slow your own breathing so you don't disturb it. I unlocked the front gates just as the sun crested the hills, spilling gold across the lawn. The limestone patio glowed, the murals painted women seeming to step right out of the wall. A year. That's how long it had been since Rachel's wedding, or what was left of it. The air smelled like wet earth and early blooms, and in that soft light, the venue didn't feel like a business. It felt like a promise I'd kept to myself. Inside, chairs were set for a small ceremony later that afternoon. A young bride, barely 25, stood near the front archway with her fiancé, holding hands like they were the only two people in the county. She spotted me, hesitated, then walked over. "Mrs. Sterling?" she asked. Her voice had that tremor of someone about to say something they'd practiced in the mirror. "I just wanted to thank you. Your story, what you did, gave me courage. I called off a wedding last year. Everyone told me I'd regret it. But I saw what you did. And I didn't." I felt something catch in my throat. "Then you already won, sweetheart." When she walked away, the sun caught her hair, and for a second I saw myself 30 years ago. Before contracts, before partnerships, before the daughter I'd raised learned to wield entitlement like a weapon. By mid-morning, I was in my office with the final paperwork spread across the desk. My memoir contract sat on top, the title typed in bold, "Not the bride, the builder." The publisher's letter said it would be a masterclass in grace under fire. I thought it was just a story about remembering who you are when someone tries to tell you otherwise. The door opened without a knock. Maya strolled in, holding something behind her back. "Before you get buried in edits, I have something for you." She set it down in front of me, a black wood frame, the glass catching the morning light. Inside was the photo from the venue's anniversary party, me in a deep green dress, one hand on the cake knife, smiling like I had just rewritten the ending to an old story. "You've got that look," Maya said. The one people get when they've put the last brick in a wall no one's tearing down. I studied the picture. This place isn't hers, I said finally, or even mine anymore. It's a boundary that breathes. We hung the photo in the lobby, right where the first rays of daylight would hit it. Later that afternoon, while the florist was unloading peonies and the caterer's trays clinked softly in the kitchen, my phone buzzed. A subject line in my inbox, from Rachel. No attachment, no preview text, just her name. I stared at it for 3 seconds, maybe 4. Then I clicked archive and watched it vanish from my screen. The evening ceremony went off without a hitch. Laughter spilled across the patio, champagne glasses chimed, and somewhere in the back of the crowd, I heard someone tell the bride, "This place has a story." It did. And every stone, every nail, every blade of grass told it better than I ever could. As the last guests left and the music faded into the dark, I locked the gates and stood at the edge of the patio. The lake reflected the stars like it was trying to keep them safe. My hands rested on the cool stone railing, the same stone I'd chosen 20 years ago, the same stone Rachel had tried to stand on like she'd laid it herself. I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I'd never surrendered. She slapped my hand off the cake. I took back the table.